Shanice Grimm is suing her client, Dallas Lee, for child care services, late fees, and property damage.
Court, come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case 2175, Grimm versus Lee.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Grimm, in what state do you live?
Missouri.
In what county?
Jackson.
You have a daycare center.
An in-home child care, yes.
For how long?
I started September of 2022.
What is your house like?
I have a single-family home with a finished basement and then like an attic type. It's 2 bedrooms.
House has 2 bedrooms?
No, up in the attic has 2 bedrooms. It's technically a 3-bedroom house, but it has made 6 rooms.
And how many children do you have?
I currently have 7.
How old are they?
14, 13, 11, 8, 5, and 3, and 1, 18 months.
3 and 18 months.
I'm sorry, she's 4 now. She just turned 4.
So the older ones go to school. Does the 5-year-old go to school?
Yes.
And the 8-year-old goes to school?
Correct.
So you have 2 little ones at home?
My 4-year-old goes to early childhood, half a day.
So you have 1 child at home during the day?
Correct.
And 1 half a day?
Yes.
And you have 3 children?
Yes, ma'am.
How old are they?
I now have a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 5-month-old.
And those were the children that you enrolled in her daycare center?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Grimm, what kind of licensing do you have, an application that do you have to make in order to run an in-home daycare center in Missouri?
So in the state of Missouri, as long as you have under 6 children, you do not have to have a license.
As long as you have 6 children in total in the house, or 6 children
that I'm watching?
That you're watching?
Correct. Because my school children are not considered watching, like under the law.
Well, you certainly have to watch your 18-month-old.
Yes, he's the only one. That's why I've always kept 5 children or less.
It is your claim that Miss Lee entered her children into your program. She paid you for a certain period of time. She owes you for 2 weeks.
Correct.
And were those 2 weeks that her children were actually in care?
Correct.
Which 2 weeks were those?
They are the last 2 weeks of October.
Of 2022?
Correct.
And the children were in your program?
Correct.
Miss Lee, were the children in Miss Grimm's program the last 2 weeks in October?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
Did you pay her for the last 2 weeks in October?
No, ma'am, I did not.
How much were you supposed to pay her?
For the last 2 weeks was supposed to be $600 because our agreement was $600 every 2 weeks.
Okay, so it was supposed to be $600.
Yes, ma'am.
So now the ball is in your court so far. Ms. Grimm, we're not talking about a late fee. We're just talking about these 2 weeks.
Correct.
First, tell me your reason for removing the children.
I removed my children out of her care because my children, every time that I picked them up, it was either they were harmed or injured, or my son, my 3-year-old, would tell me something had happened while I was gone at work in her care. My son had told me on numerous accounts that she hit him herself, and then he also told me that her 15-year-old son, or 14, I'm sorry, had also spanked him. And when I did ask him, or I asked her actually, I said, "Who is Trey?" Because he said, "Mommy, Trey hit me." We were getting in the car. They normally do help me get in the car with my 3 children, seeing I have one who's barely walking.
You get going all over the place.
Yes, ma'am. So they normally help me get in the car with my children, so they were outside with us. And my son said, "Mommy, Trey hit me like this." I didn't know any Trey, so I asked her, "Who is Trey?" And she said, "That's my son." And he said, "That's me." He was standing right there next to her. He said, "I'm Trey." And I said, "Bryson said that you hit him." And he said, "Yes, I hit Bryson." He said, "I popped him because Bryson wasn't doing right. Bryson didn't want to go to timeout."
On what day was that?
That was on October 25th.
And what was the last day that your children attended?
October 27th.
Okay, so despite the fact that Trey, your Trey?
Yes, ma'am.
Slapped the 3-year-old, said that he slapped the 3-year-old, you let him stay there for an extra 2 days.
Yes, ma'am.
Just that's it, yes. Now, where were you working that you had your children in daycare?
I was working as a CNA.
What is that?
A certified nurse's assistant.
Where?
It's a
nursing
like a
home?
rehab. Yes, ma'am.
When did you start working there?
I started working there in September.
September of 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
Beginning of September?
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you stop working there?
I stopped working there October 27th. That was my last day.
If I were to call, would they tell me that they terminated you or you quit?
I quit.
Did you quit on the 27th?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about now? Are you working?
I am.
Who are you working for?
I work through a temp agency, working per diem at different locations as a CNA.
And who takes care of your children?
My stepmom. My children,
Just a second. And when did you start that job?
I started that job about 4 weeks ago.
So in December.
Yes, ma'am. Late November or so.
You left the children there until the end of October. It couldn't have been so disturbing for you, madam, to leave the children there until the end of October, another 6 weeks, if you felt as if they weren't getting adequate care. And if you did, that would be on you.
Janice Grimm claims her client, Dallas Lee, refused to pay for child care services. Dallas is countersuing for lost wages and emotional distress.
So a relative has been taking care of your children?
Yes, ma'am. Not all 3 of them. I had to send my 2 sons because I had to rearrange my daycare situation. I had to send them back to Texas to be with their dad.
So 2 of them went back to their father?
Yes, ma'am.
And who do you live with here?
I live with my dad.
What does he do?
My dad is a nuclear medicine technologist.
So your stepmom takes care of one of the children.
My 5-month-old daughter, yes, ma'am.
Who's in the house. Now you're going to tell me why you didn't pay her for the last 2 weeks.
So my children began in her care September 12th. September 13th, she sent me a text message while I was at work, and she said, I want to let you know, Lil Mama was bit today by my 1-year-old on her cheek. She sent me a picture. I have this.
Not interested. I mean, it's not that I'm disinterested. It's that don't show me anything from September, madam. You kept your children with her into October and through the end of October. And if anything was so concerning to you that you thought your children would be at risk, I'm certain that you would have discussed it with your father, and your father would have said to you, don't speak. Okay. And your father would have said to you, if you have a problem with the children, don't let them stay there. What you did, okay, I can see that you're dying to tell me something. What?
Yes, ma'am. My daughter had no other choice but to keep her children in care because I work a full-time job.
Let me explain something to you, sir. Your daughter was living with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. There is always an alternative, sir. I have young grandchildren, and I would say if I was legitimately concerned for their health and safety, I don't care what it is, stay home and take care of your children. You'll have a roof over your head until you find appropriate take care. And if you didn't do that, then you're not much of a grandfather.
Well,
you can't use something that happened in September or early October to say, well, that's why I didn't pay the last 2 weeks. So you can't make excuses, sir. I'm telling you, I'm a grandmother and I've had little children. I don't care what you had to do. Quit my job, whatever that job is, and say, we'll all stay home and take care of the children until you find, or you stay home and take care of the children. I'll provide you with whatever basics you need until you get the right daycare. And if you didn't do that, don't tell me that your daughter didn't have a choice. There is always a choice when your babies are concerned.
In our estimation at that time, we were giving her some hard life lessons because she does now have 3 children, and there are going to be some difficulties in this living situation. There are going to be some things. So what we're doing, we're giving her some tough love and saying, hey, you cannot give up just because the chips are down or because things happen. You have to try to figure things out.
Well, that would be on you. That's not on her. This is not her daughter. It's your daughter.
Absolutely.
And your grandchildren, sir.
Absolutely.
And if you want to teach her some real hard lessons and say you got to stay with the daycare, even though you're dissatisfied.
We said give her a chance because it was the first day.
So.
It was the first incident, first day. We said give her a chance. Things happen sometimes.
What I don't want to hear is from you, who seem like a very intelligent man, a working man, is my daughter had no choice. Your daughter has a choice. Her choice is to say to you, Dad, please, I have to find the right daycare. I have to stop working at this job. I may need a month. You may not have liked her previous irresponsible behavior, right?
Correct.
But the deed is done. She got 3 young children.
Beautiful children.
Right? So what you do is when you have 3 young, beautiful children, you protect them.
Absolutely.
And if you're not smart enough to protect them yourself, you got to rely on your father who's smart enough to do that. What I'm saying to you is your daughter used this lady's services, and she has to pay for it. She may not send her children back, but your statement that you were so anxious to make to me, which is my daughter had no choice, she did have a choice, sir. She did have a choice. Before I would let my children stay in a place where I actually believed that they were being abused, because that's what she's suggesting. I mean, she's not suggesting that this young man, who I'm not condoning hitting a 3-year-old, gave him a slap on the rear end. I'm not condoning that. But there were no injuries to him. I don't know whether you've done it. I don't know whether she's done it to her child. You certainly don't want a daycare provider's child to discipline a 3-year-old.
Absolutely.
That's not what it's about.
But after the first incident, what we were trying to teach her is that you don't just throw in the towel, because Ms. Grimm was just starting her service up, and
September 5th.
So we understand that there are going to be some hiccups and some things that she has to fix as she comes across them. And so she's a young lady. My daughter's a young lady. So as an older man, I'm trying to support 2 individuals to build their lives up. And so I told my daughter, I don't like that she was bitten, but at least she came forward very quickly and told you. So leave them there for now. And if anything else transpires, then we can start to look at things then. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who do you work for, sir?
I work for the Veterans Administration.
And how long have you worked for the Veterans Administration?
21 years.
Do you get paid every 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's say your boss at the VA all of a sudden decided they didn't like the work you were doing, and you left and they owed you 2 weeks' pay because you had actually worked for the 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
And you sued them for those 2 weeks. You worked there. You said, well, we didn't like the quality of his work for those 2 weeks. Well, then you fire him, but you pay him. It's like going to a restaurant. My favorite analogy is you go into your favorite restaurant where you get a steak. And you order a steak, medium, Pittsburgh medium. Steak comes, you cut into it, you take a bite. Oh my God, you say, I don't like the way this tastes. You take the plate, you spit out the bite if you're smart, call the waiter over and say, this is a bad steak, right?
Absolutely.
And the waiter takes it off the bill, or you order something else. Now you cut into that same steak, you taste, you say, this tastes terrible. Maybe the next bite will taste better. Before you know it, you've finished the whole steak. Waiter comes over to take your clean plate. You say, the steak was awful. I didn't like it. It was bad. Well, what'd you eat it for? But if you ate the steak, you got to pay for it. If you take a bite and say it's no good, I'm in your corner. Send it back. But your daughter ate the steak. She used her services for 2 weeks and didn't pay her.
Well, we can't say that she used her services because there are other pieces of evidence that we have.
Well, you mean you're talking about that sometimes she left the children with her husband?
Yes.
Yeah. Baloney. Your daughter had the benefit of daycare so that she could work. If you're not satisfied with the service, you stop using the service. If you continue to use the service despite the fact that you're not satisfied with it, you gotta pay for it. That's America. You got paid, your father got paid, she gets paid.
Shanice Grimm has accused her client, Dallas Lee, of refusing to pay for child care services. Dallas claims Shanice wrongfully disciplined and neglected her children.
Your daughter had the benefit of daycare so that she could work.
Absolutely.
And she had the benefit of daycare from this lady that enabled your daughter to make money.
But if we're talking breach of contract, the contract was breached when the husband watched the child. And
now you're not teaching your daughter responsibility. Now you're making excuses. Now you're not teaching your daughter responsibility. Your daughter worked to make money. You worked those last 2 weeks, didn't stay home with your grandchildren. You made money.
Absolutely.
The only one that didn't make money and had her 3 children for those 2 weeks was the plaintiff. She ate the steak. She used the service. She didn't have anybody else. It's not as if, well, I had to hire somebody else to take care of the kids the last 2 weeks, even though it was in my deal. So that's why I'm not paying them. She worked, you worked, she worked. And if her husband, if she ran out to the store and left her husband, unless you're telling me that that was such a breach of the agreement that your daughter took the children out of her program. Did she? No, she did not. She didn't say, I'm not allowing your husband to take care of my children, even if it's just for an hour. I'm taking my children out of the program. Dad, can you help me out for the next couple of weeks until I find something else? But you can't eat the steak, which she did. Now you can sit down.
Can I say one more thing?
Not if you want to continue to look foolish. Now you're not teaching her responsibility.
Well,
now you're not teaching her responsibility. I don't want to have to teach you responsibility.
Well, you don't have to. I'm a veteran. I know what responsibility is, but when you are promoting your program as one thing, but your service is another, I cannot say that if Bobby Flay is cooking the steak.
It doesn't matter who was cooking the steak. It was whether you ate the steak. It's whether you ate the steak.
I get what you're saying, Judge, but if it's promoted as Bobby Flay cooking it and Bob Burger cooked it, and I don't like the taste, then those are two different things.
Oh, no, sir. If you're promoting Bobby Flay as cooking the steak and you find, or the hamburger, and you find out that Bobby Flay's younger brother was cooking the steak or was cooking the burger, and either way, if the burger is no good, you're not going to eat it. But you can't eat it and say, well, I really thought I was getting a Bobby Flay hamburger, and I didn't get a Bobby Flay hamburger, so I'm not going to pay for it, even though I ate it. Now you can sit down. How much is 2 weeks' worth of care? $600?
Yes, ma'am.
Judgment for the plaintiff, $600. You have a counterclaim. Counterclaim is ridiculous. Money owed for lost wages, emotional distress on behalf of the children. You shouldn't have emotional distress on behalf of the children, madam. You're their mother. The first time you had an inkling that you felt that your children, your young children, were being neglected in the plaintiff's care, what you should have done was remove them. Remove them. First time you felt as if 3-year-old shouldn't have been subject of a slap by this young man? Great. Remove them. You found that the baby, the little one, was bitten by her little one. See, that's not watching them carefully enough, because they, I think, are supposed to be separated, correct?
Yes.
No, we were all in one room, so they weren't having to be separated, because with me only having less than 4 children, there was no way of separating because there was only one me.
It's a big responsibility to take care of little children.
Correct.
My daughter shouldn't have been in his reach. She did tell me that she left out of the room.
I agree with you.
She left out of the room is what she told me, Judge. So that's actually not true. She told me that she left out of the room and went to the kitchen.
What day? Give me the date that happened.
September 13th.
You left the children there until the end of October. It couldn't have been so disturbing for you, madam, to leave the children there until the end of October, another 6 weeks, if you felt as if they weren't getting adequate care. And if you did, that would be on you. And maybe a little bit on your father. Because if you told him about it, said, oh my God, that's terrible. Take my child out right away. All 3 of them. But you didn't. You left them in there September 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, all the way up until the end of September and the end of October. That's on you.
Actually, she did not have them in the end of September because she was suspended from her job. So they were gone for 2 weeks in September.
Were you suspended from your job?
I was. I had to...
That's my question. You were suspended from your job. When you were suspended from your job, did you take the children out of daycare?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's reasonable. She didn't give you a problem with that, I assume?
No.
And you didn't pay for those 2 weeks?
I did not.
Great. Well, these 2 weeks you're going to pay for. Because
I don't believe I owe her anything.
I don't care what you believe. If you're not listening to what I'm saying to you and you're fixed in your opinion, that means you haven't learned anything. Your father tried to teach you a little bit of tough love? What I'm telling you is, if you work, you get paid. If you're not satisfied with the service, you stop using the service. If you continue to use the service despite the fact that you're not satisfied with it, you got to pay for it. That's America. You got paid, your father got paid, she gets paid. She didn't get paid for the 2 weeks you took your kids out. Didn't say to you, well, you have to pay me anyway. I have to keep this open for you. That was very fair. Took the kids out, didn't pay. You left your kids in, you pay $600. Your counterclaim's dismissed. We're finished.
This court is adjourned.
I am a little upset she didn't see things my way.
The judge was kind of in my favor for the majority of it.
You know, her leaving my children in the care of her 15-year-old son and also her husband.
Then why did she continue bringing her children to me for another month?
Also, my son letting me know that, you know, she hit him.
I have never touched her children. I could take a lie detector test to prove it.
It was pretty difficult for me because I didn't have any other choices. I didn't have anyone else who could help me with keeping all 3 of my children while I work.
She actually never gave me excuses. She actually just told me she was going to pay me.
Life is not easy.
If you work, you should get paid.
But you get back up and you keep moving.
My generation, I'm not sure about yours, I haven't had much experience in yours, but in mine, I think we confuse having to make a hard choice with being out of options. Here, I felt for the defendant, she had to make a hard choice. But even when her father came up and felt the need to burst out and say, my daughter had no options, she had no choice. Well, she did have a choice. It was a hard choice. You had to send your 2 older sons to live with their father and find a sort of mediocre at best childcare situation. But you made the choice to have those 3 children. And when you have children, you make a commitment to make the hard choices to benefit them.
In their best interest.
In their best interest. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you shouldn't become a parent.
In any event, I tried to make my steak analogy. It didn't.
I thought it was great.
Okay.
I had a great time.
Great. I'm glad you
I thought
did.
it was a
Patricia Franchini and her husband Giovanni Nunez are suing their neighbor, Scott Elam, for the cost of a baby macaw bird.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge.
Hello, Kevin.
Case 2194, Franchini Nunez versus Ellen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Nunez,
Yes.
your husband?
Yes, ma'am.
You and Mr. Elam?
Elam, Your Honor.
Elam are neighbors.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have backyards that are joined, separated only by a fence.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of fence?
It looks plastic. I'm not sure.
It's
Who
a
has a
vinyl
picture of the
Your Honor.
fence? And you each have, as would happen, dogs, same breed.
No, ma'am.
What do you have?
I have a Shetland sheepdog and a Dutch shepherd, ma'am.
And what do you have?
I have shepherd mixes.
How many dogs?
2, Your Honor.
And you have 2.
Yes, ma'am.
This is what the case is about. This is the fence. It's not a chain link fence. It's either a wooden or a plastic fence. And you can see that underneath this fence, there's a board here where I assume there's a hole because the dogs dig holes to get to each other. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Fair statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Case is about an incident that occurred. You've been neighbors for a while, and you have had this dog digging also for a while. Also correct?
Yes, the defendant's dog.
Okay. This incident happened on the 16th of December, 2022.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me what happened?
I got up that morning to let my dogs out.
Both.
One dog. Okay, so the day started out, me and my husband woke up. My husband had to go get a tire fixed, so he took my smallest dog, my Shetland sheepdog, with him. I remained home with my 2 children.
Slowly. Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. How old are your kids?
They are 6 and 7, ma'am.
Okay.
I remained home with my children because they were ill, and I had an appointment with them later on that day. My husband went to go fix the tire at 8 a.m. I got up in the morning to let my dog out.
Got up in the morning to let your dog out.
Yes.
The shepherd mix?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I let her out, and then she came back in, and I was cleaning, and my 2 children were in my master suite with my macaw, Penelope.
Okay. That's what the case about. This case is about a macaw.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
cost of a macaw.
Yes,
Which is a bird.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
My kids were in the master suite. I opened the door. I'm out there cleaning. I let my dog out of my
And the dog came back.
sliding door. She came back. Well, then she stayed by the door. Now, none of my windows have curtains, so I can...
Just a second. So that, but she stayed by the door, but she was inside?
She came back inside. I shut the door. This was 20 minutes went by. She's by the door. She's crying. I told her we would play later. I assumed she had to go to the restroom again, and I let her out again. She stood on the step, but she didn't go further than that, and she was just kind of staring out. From the left side of the house is where the defendant's dog, Bella, charged in my home. And then when I tried to grab her...
When you say his dog, Bella,
Yes.
came into the side and ran into the house, that doesn't... Somehow, if the dog, Bella, came out and your dog was on the step, it would seem to me it would stop on the step at first to sniff, play with your dog if your dog is sitting outside. I mean, I have dogs. Would go over to that dog first, not run into your house.
You would think that, ma'am, but she's been in our house 3 times before this because I had to return her to the defendant on 3 separate occasions. And she didn't do that day. When she came in the backyard on the 3 other instances, I remember the very first time someone from that household came to my door, and I knew the dog was in my backyard, but I didn't open my door. I left her back there. I figured they'd come. They did. And I said, hold on a second. I put my kids, I put my Sheltie in the room with my bird, and I shut the door.
Are we talking about the same
No,
date,
ma'am.
December?
We're talking about other days that I brought.
Okay, let's not go on tributaries.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your dog's name?
Lucy.
Lucy. So the dog just went straight into your house. And what did Lucy do?
Lucy charged after her and tried to attack her.
Okay, so the dog has been in your house before. Have there been incidents with the 2 dogs?
No, ma'am. The defendant's dog is submissive to my dog. So the only time I brought the dog in my home was when I shut all the doors to all my bedrooms
Someone from the defendant's home came. I opened up the front door, brought her in, and she went straight out because there was nowhere else for her to go.
Okay, so it's your dog that is Lucy is the more aggressive dog.
Lucy's never been aggressive with her. I believe that Lucy was aggressive with her that day because of the way she came in the house.
When you say Lucy was aggressive, what did she do?
She started growling at her, and she started...
In the house?
Yes.
Now they're in the house. Put a period there. We have the two dogs in your house.
Yes.
And they are growling at each other. So that's not a happy picture because they're big dogs.
Yes.
Now let's get to the bird. You purchased a macaw.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a photograph of what they look like?
Yes.
When did you purchase the macaw?
I purchased her with payments over time. I completed the purchase at the end of September 30th.
This is the macaw.
Yes, ma'am. That's my
A parrot.
Yes, ma'am.
In December, how old was she?
She was going to be 8 months.
And how much did you pay for her?
I paid $4,320.08 for Penelope.
Okay, can I see the bill?
Absolutely, ma'am. Her birth certificate along
She's
with
beautiful.
all of the...
Pretty bird.
Thank you, ma'am. She bolted in my master suite where my kids were.
Lucy?
No, Bella.
Bella.
Bella did. And I went in there, like, I heard my kids screaming, Bella is killing Penelope.
And later today.
Is there something wrong with your mind?
No.
Did you just say to me, am I crazy? Did he say he owed back child support?
Yes.
To her?
Yes.
Patricia Franchini claims her neighbor, Scott Ellum, owes for the cost of a baby macaw bird killed by Scott's dog.
Tell me what got you interested in the macaw.
Earlier this year, full disclosure, ma'am, ended up in the hospital very sick for 2 weeks, and I was going through a lot, and I started volunteering at the bird store down by my home, and I really liked the Hans macaw because my grandma had one when she was younger.
Slowly.
Yes, ma'am. And so I spent a lot of time bonding with the birds there, and my husband and I thought it would be good and therapeutic for me, given what I had been going through.
Okay, now the two dogs are in your house, sort of fighting with each other.
They did not fight, ma'am. I did not allow
Well,
them to.
growling.
Yes, ma'am.
Growling at each other. And tell me what happened with Bella and the macaw.
I tried to calm Lucy down, and my master door was open. Everything was happening so fast. I know I'm describing it slowly, but it was quick. She bolted in my master suite where my kids were.
Lucy?
No, Bella.
Bella.
Bella did. I heard my kids screaming, Bella is killing Penelope. And
That's the bird.
Yes. And I tried to get to Bella. I couldn't. My dog was standing in between us. And while I was with the two dogs, then my son thought, oh, I'm going to go get her. And that's when Bella kind of snapped at him and she scratched him. And so then I couldn't get her. I couldn't. She literally was like chewing her up and like dropping her and like biting her again, you know? And it wasn't until my Dutch Shepherd bit her on the nose that she finally let her go. And I swooped and I grabbed her. I booked it to my pantry in my kitchen with my kids. And Lucy stayed in front of the door. And I have a door on it, and I just stayed in there. And I called my husband, and I was screaming on the phone. He got home maybe, I don't know how long. It probably really only was like 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like forever. She was like
And where
dying
was
in my
Bella
arms.
during this time?
Bella was around the pantry with the bird in her mouth. And then I took the bird from Bella, and then I put her to the cage. And then Lucy just stayed by the parrot. And then I opened the door and talked to the kids. They were all hysterical, and I was trying to understand what she was saying.
Where was Bella?
Bella was in the kitchen with a parrot.
And how did Bella get back to the defendant?
I walked her over.
How did you do that?
Kind of like how a mother pup grabs her by the neck. I grabbed her by the neck, and I walked her over.
Okay, your dog killed their bird in their house. And?
Your Honor, the hole that allowed Bella to get into their backyard was primarily dug by their dog over the course of many, many months.
And?
I continued to repair my side of the fence. Their dog continued to dig the hole, destroyed wood that I had put there. The dog got through. In that story, it's sad, but that's not the story that he gave to my wife when he came pounding on my door.
Well, you can't tell me what he said to your wife, sir.
Okay, that's fair, Your Honor. I can tell you what he said to me. I called him.
You can tell me what he said to you.
Instantly?
Just you have to understand, he wasn't home when your dog got into the house. He came home at the end of the episode. Do you understand that?
I understand that.
Okay. Understanding that, you can tell me your version of what he said to you.
What they both said to me, I've had conversations with the both of them since this has happened.
Okay.
The story has changed 2 or 3 times. First, it was she was doing something in the backyard and Bella just came charging in and basically knocked her out of the way, got inside. The first story was, I assumed the entire time that he was home because when he was talking to me over the phone.
I don't care what you assumed. He wasn't home when it started. Your problem, sir, is, first of all, you were aware of the hole. I don't care who dug it. You were aware of it. And it's not the first time that the dog has gone onto their property. Has their dog got onto your property?
No, because I fixed my side of it. I take care
so
of
the
my
answer
house.
is no.
Correct.
Who do you live in your house with?
My wife and my children.
How old are your children?
I have a 1-year-old. I have a 7-year-old.
Let us say it's their fault that the hole existed that allowed your dog to get out. But you were aware of it because it had happened before that they had to bring your dog back. That a fair statement?
That's fair, yes.
Okay. Let us assume that it was your dog that was responsible for the hole. And their dog, despite the fact that yours was a better digger, you know, having dogs and having a fence, they both dig at the same place. They may not have fixed their side, but they both dig at the same place, trying to get to each other. Whose fault do you think it would be if their dog created the major part of the hole, got into your yard, and bit your 1-year-old? Whose fault would that be?
I think it would be equally our faults.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Really?
For digging, for not taking care of your property, absolutely.
Really? I actually find that answer sort of bizarre.
I would take responsibility if my child got hurt due to something that I didn't take care of. Absolutely, I would.
Well, you may feel guilty about it, but you would certainly want them to pay all of your child's medical bills.
No, I would not.
Well, then you're a better person than the law is, sir, because your dog was outside of your control, clearly, because it got into their house. It was something that you were aware was a possibility, no matter who dug the hole, so you were aware because it had happened before, and your dog caused damage. And the damage your dog caused, and I'm putting the emotional distress, these 2 young children and the plaintiff, seeing your dog kill this bird that they had been paying off so much per month for a very long time. Putting aside that, they paid $4,300 for this property that your dog destroyed. And that's your fault. You're responsible for that. So if, because of this problem, and your dog has a problem, and their dog has not come onto your property, but your dog comes onto their property, then you have to say, you know what? I'm not letting my dog go out unsupervised because it has created trouble in the past. May have been their fault because they didn't fill in the hole as quickly or as carefully as you did. But you knew that that happened, and you're responsible for the damage. It would be no different than if the dog ran inside, and as she was trying to get the dog bit her, and she had to have surgery, and she had to have a plastic surgeon deal with reconstruction. Who do you think would be responsible for that? That would be you. And just because it's a poor little bird that happened to be the victim of this doesn't make you any less responsible. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $4,300. We're finished.
Court is adjourned.
I feel like it was justice for Penelope.
When a homeowner doesn't take care of their property and someone lets another dog in their house, they shouldn't be blaming other people for that.
It was extremely difficult to hear my kids screaming like that and do nothing to calm them down.
The judge's ruling is the judge's ruling.
I hope that he never gets another pet again.
I don't think there's gonna ever be a relationship, which is totally fine by me.
One of the most interesting things about that case is I don't think that the defendant's dog, Bella, was a quote-unquote aggressive dog. But I didn't get a hint that the other dog was even aggressive. Even by the fact that the husband was able to walk her back by the scruff of the neck. If that was an aggressive dog, they would just turn right around and give you a nice little snap. So that says to me that although the dog didn't obviously do it on purpose, what are you going to do? But you're responsible as a defendant. You let your dog out. It's a act that's happened more than once. You were on notice.
Dog is out of your control. You're responsible. That's the bottom line.
Case 2202, Young versus Buchanan. All parties, please come forward.
Essie Young is suing her granddaughter's father, Keith Buchanan, for an unpaid loan she gave him for a car.
Miss Young, the defendant is married to your daughter?
No.
He is the father of your grandchild?
Yes.
Do he and your daughter live together?
No.
Where does your daughter live?
In Maple Shade.
Were they ever married?
No.
They have one child?
Yes.
Who's 12?
Yes.
Did you live together with Miss Young's daughter?
Well, at one point, she lived with me in Maple Shade.
How long ago?
This was 2010, 2011.
You mean when your daughter was a baby?
Yes.
How long have you had custody of your granddaughter?
11 years. My daughter never stayed with him.
I don't know that. He says she did.
Yeah, but she did.
So she got that money that he owed her for child support, for taking care of his daughter, and he wrote that off of the loan. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Essie Young claims her granddaughter's father, Keith Buchanan, refuses to pay back a loan she gave him for a car.
This is a very simple case, because I don't have to get into the history of why you have custody of your granddaughter.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan, according to you, asked you for a loan to buy a car.
Yes.
When was that?
Before he got it, he was calling every day.
Did you maintain a relationship with him?
Yes and no.
Would he visit his daughter?
No.
Ever?
Once in a blue moon.
Okay.
I usually have to take my granddaughter to see him.
Okay. It was sort of odd to me if he was never married to your daughter, so they didn't have a formalized relationship. They don't live together now. Why would you loan him? I know that you did. Mm-hmm. Why would you loan him money?
My granddaughter.
Except you're a very nice person.
My granddaughter asked me to. She said, "Grandma, would you please help my dad?" I told her I really don't want to. And she said, "Could you please do it for me?"
Oh, different story.
Yes. And then I said, okay.
Okay. So you discussed with your daughter during one of these visits that you needed money to buy a car?
No, never did.
You never did?
No.
Who is this person?
That's my wife.
Does she work?
Yes.
Do you work?
Yes.
Well, why would you ask your daughter's grandmother, who takes care of her, who's always taken care of her? You don't. Neither does her mother. Why would you not ask your wife's family? You both work. Take out a loan. Why would you go to her and ask her for money?
But it was a situation that happened and I lost my previous car. I contacted Essie. I talked to Essie.
No, I'm asking you why you would ask her. What would prompt you to call her? Doesn't she have parents?
Yes, you do. I did that, and at the time they couldn't help.
So you went to her parents first?
I went to her family first. They said, sorry, they can't help at the time. So Mrs. Young was my last resource, which I didn't want to use, but at the time I had to use it because I had no other choice. I had to hurry up and get a vehicle.
Well, why didn't you take out a loan?
Actually, I couldn't.
What do you mean you couldn't?
Because my credit's not all that great. I tried to take out loans. I tried to go.
Does your wife have a car?
Yes, she has a car.
Okay, why don't you use her car?
She worked. I work an hour and a half away from home, and she worked too, and we worked around the same time.
How much money did you borrow from her?
$2,000.
How much did you give back?
$912.
$912. Show me.
On page 4, May 5th, 2022, she got $912.
From what?
From my taxes. And we agreed on once I filed my taxes, I would give her $2,000 for my taxes. She got $912 from them, that same taxes, because I owed backup child support. So she got on top of my regular payment for child support plus $912.
What? Is there something wrong with your mind?
No.
Did you just say to me, am I crazy? Did he say he owed back child support?
Yes.
And so she got that money that he owed her for child support, for taking care of his daughter, and he wrote that off of the loan. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Oh, my God. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Well, not ever. I should take that back. It's the dumbest thing I've heard today. If you owed her back child support, how much did you owe her?
I only owed her $900.
In back child support?
Yes.
Okay.
That I fully forgot.
Just a second. You owed her that money. In addition to owing her that money, you owed her $2,000. Do you understand that? So you owed her $900 plus $2,000. Are you not following me? Am I getting something wrong here?
I'm with you.
Are you following that? That's either a yes or a no.
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, I'm going to repeat it again. What you said was they took money out of your taxes for back child support, $900. So that means you paid her $900 of the $2,000. That's what your argument is.
Yes.
Am I getting that?
Yes.
You already owed her the $900.
I had no awareness that I owed. Owed her $900. When I found out that $900 got taken out the taxes, I had no tax coming back. I was like, look, you got $900. You're gonna have to give me time. And that's when it went south.
Oh, you got $900 that I owed you anyway. Now I need more time. Oh my God. How is your granddaughter in school? She do okay?
Yes, she
does
well.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Either his math skills or his moral skills are somehow lacking.
It's the moral.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,000. We're finished. Thank you very much.
This court is adjourned.
I think the judge seen right through him.
He was gonna be miserable, so I just let him be miserable.
No one thinks like that.
As long as she go about her life, I go about my life, leave my family alone.
I just think he was hustling me.
Only contact me when he got something to do with my daughter, that's it.
I don't want anything to do with him either.
So initially, I may have been a little lost. It took me some time to get there. But I thought that what the defendant was saying was that he was expecting $2,000 on his tax returns. So he told plaintiff, when I get it, I'll repay you the $2,000. And then in his mind, when the $900 left the account, he didn't know that that was not going to be there for the back child support. So he only had, the $900 and change left to give her. I was like, okay, that makes sense. He thought that it would be the full $2,000. Come to find out, he thinks that the back child support is what fulfills his
loan
obligation, which wasn't even the full amount, not even half. And all to someone that has been raising your child for 12 years.
He's probably worse at math.
Katie Calderon and Amante Nepomuceno for rent and the cost of 2 cats.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, everyone.
Case 2170, Judy versus Calderon Nepomuceno.
Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, my goodness. Calderon.
Hello.
What's your first name?
Amante.
Amante?
Yeah.
Good. It's much easier than your last name for me to pronounce. Mr. Giglio, this roughly is what the case is about. You and Miss Calderon were in a relationship for a period of time. You decided to take an apartment. You were both on the lease. So far, correct?
Correct.
Your arrangement with Miss Calderon, which seems to be consistent in both your complaint and your answer, is that you had a much better paying job. She was going to provide the food and some other stuff for the house, and you were going to be covering the rent when you lived together, which you did.
Correct.
There came a time when Amante, who was a friend of yours, came to live with you. According to you, he was going to help out with the rent.
Correct.
He came, he lived with you, he helped out with the rent for maybe a period of time, and then he helped himself to your girlfriend.
Correct.
Now they're a couple. When you were no longer a couple with Miss Calderon, she stayed in the apartment for a period of time, but then they both left.
Correct.
And you're suing both of them for rent and for the return of 2 cats that they took when they left. You claim the cats are yours.
That's correct.
That's what the case is about. And some cat expenses in the event that I let them keep the cat. Cats. 2 cats. So when did you and Miss Calderon sign a lease together?
We signed the lease together at the end of July with the landlord present.
July of 2022?
July of 2021. Correct.
And it was for a year?
Correct.
And you had a job working for whom, sir?
I worked for a company called Steris.
What do they do?
They provide medical equipment to hospitals all over the world.
How long have you been working for them?
I'm going to have 8 years under my belt this year.
And when you moved into the apartment in July of 2021, what kind of work was Miss Calderon doing?
At the time, she was working at an animal hotel.
It was a pet daycare boarding facility.
Okay. Were you an hourly employee?
I was an hourly employee.
And I am correct that when you moved in July, your arrangement was that you were going to pay the rent.
That was...
The arrangement.
Correct.
When did Armante come to live with you?
About August to...
That's
right.
incorrect.
Shh.
He...
Just...
Amante was going to be our third roommate.
You mean 1, 2, 3?
Correct.
Well, you're not roommates, really. You and the defendant, Miss Calderon, were not roommates. You shared a room.
We shared a room and...
And Armante was going to live where?
In another room.
And what was your arrangement with Armante with regard to paying rent?
We would split the rent 3 ways.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And how much was your share of the rent?
I would say approximately $927.
How long did you live there?
I was there when they signed the lease. I watched it all happen when they signed the lease. I came in, they signed everything.
Well, you didn't sign the lease.
I did not.
But you were there from the beginning?
Yes.
And it was your agreement with the plaintiff that you would pay 1/3 of the rent?
Yes.
Great.
We asked the landlord
Okay, so, hey, try not to hold each other's hands. Let's do the coochie someplace else. So you agreed with the plaintiff that despite the fact that you were not on the lease, you were going to assume the responsibility of 1/3 of the rent, $927.
Yes.
So you moved in July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. You left in April?
Yeah.
So you were there for 9 months?
Yes.
Did you pay rent for the 9 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
He paid rent for about the 7.5 months.
Okay. And then you left?
Yes.
Why did you leave?
I decided to leave because he decided to go to another place he was offered. So
what do you mean he decided to go to another place?
He
that was...
got a place from his grandparents in another city. So I couldn't hold down the rent with her. So I decided to leave to save money and go back to my parents' house.
Now, Mr. Jalil, you see, you don't make up a story like that, like he just told me. A lot of that has the ring of truth to it. Where are you living now?
My grandparents' house in an in-law unit.
So when did you tell them that you were going to a different place?
In March.
When did you leave?
I left in July.
Did you let him know that you were staying until the end of the lease?
I
what?
I discussed with them that I would be leaving, but I would stick around to help them find either a different location or even suggesting that we all went back to our respected families just to, call it.
Mr. Jalil, this isn't working for you. I have to tell you something, sir. This case is not working for you at all. And it's only because Mr. Amante is very direct with me that you're suing them for $10,000. Where does that come from in your mind? Your agreement with her was you were going to pay the rent. You were never out of pocket. Your agreement was you were going to pay the rent. He paid his rent when he was there. He paid his 1/3. You then told them you were leaving. That's a whole different story than what you wrote in your complaint, Mr. Giulio. Do you understand?
Correct.
It's a whole different story. So, at best, Armante would owe you for 3 months' rent if they just left. But you told them that you were leaving. Now, when did you find out that they were a couple?
I found out at the end of April.
Were you all living together?
Yes.
So you just had 2 months left to the lease. So he was paying you. He paid you in March. You had May, June. You signed the lease in July. So it was over at the end of June, June 30th.
It would have been over at the end of July, Your Honor.
Well, she doesn't owe you any money for rent. At most, he owes you 2 months' rent. Tell me why you left.
My job doesn't pay that well, so I decided to go back to my parents' house.
When you took this apartment, this expensive apartment, that was almost $3,000 a month rent, had you had a discussion with Armante about moving in with you before?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jalil, I'm reading your complaint because something wasn't registering right with me. You say you moved into the apartment together in August of 2021. Then you go through a whole bunch of stuff about a cat and then another adopted cat. You said in October we adopted a second cat. Around this same time, a third roommate moved in to shoulder some of the rent. Well, that's not true. He moved in right at the beginning.
And that was...
that was what?
That was...
a mistake.
That was a mistake.
Okay. But Armante acknowledges that he agreed right at the beginning. He volunteered the fact that he was there at the lease signing because it was agreed at the lease signing that he was going to pay a third of the rent. So, sir, you owe him rent as long as you show me that you've paid the rent. You moved out in July?
Yes.
And you paid your rent through July, or were you evicted?
No, I paid my rent in July.
Through July?
Yes.
Okay. 1854. Amante, you owe him $1,854. That's for 2 months' rent. Got it?
Okay.
I'm not subtracting anything because you stole his girlfriend.
That's fair.
What were you requesting when you filed your small claims case?
Either the return of both cats or $5,000.
That's not happening for you, Mr. Jalil.
And later today.
There were restrictions put on the space.
No.
You have to pay attention.
Okay.
Sir, because what I'm suggesting is really in your favor.
Oh, okay. Let me. Okay.
Kamar Jalil claims his former roommates, Katie Calderon and Amante Nepomuceno, are wrongfully keeping his cats and owe him rent money.
Now let's deal with the issue with the cats. She doesn't owe you any rent. That was not your agreement with her. You moved out in July, August, September, October, November, December. 5 months ago, she's had both cats, right?
Correct.
She says they're her cats. When did you first file a small claims case?
September of 2022.
What were you requesting when you filed your small claims case? Be careful.
I was requesting either the return of both cats or $5,000, which was the accumulated expense of not just the cats, but also the expenses of her dogs as well. So any animal expenses for the time.
That's not happening for you, Mr. Jalil. When the cats were either registered or went to the vet, whose name is on the sheet as owner?
I believe it was Miss Calderon.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she owns the cats, and she's had them for the last 5 months. I suggest that you go and adopt 2 more if you want some more cats. Do you understand?
Yes.
You were living together as a couple. However, your friend Amante has to pay you for the couple of months' rent that he didn't because he says, not you, he volunteered that was your agreement from the very beginning. So he owes you $1,854. We're finished. Thank you very much.
This court is adjourned.
I think he's just kind of butthurt that I moved on.
At least now I can put everything behind me and say that I did try.
I didn't think it would escalate this far.
All you can do in a situation like this is just you learn from it and you move on.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
This is what it is. It's life.
I find fascinating, Sarah, that people will write and or be assisted in writing a complaint and an answer, but they read it over. This man is an intelligent man. He has a serious job for 8 years. First of all, he was suing for $10,000. Come up with that money. $5,000 for the cat's expenses, ridiculous. But his complaint had really nothing to, even the timeline.
As your clerk, I know that is a pet peeve of yours when
I don't understand
they
it.
don't
You know,
match up.
if you're going to tell a lie,
at least tell a consistent lie.
Right.
I think the right thing happened. I think the defendant friend admitted himself that he owed the rent, and that was great, even though he probably should have just kept his mouth shut.
And not said, I was there when the lease was signed. This was always our agreement.
Yeah.
I was going to be the
but
third
he was
roommate.
honest, which we always appreciate, and so I think the right thing.
So
I think he needs to, like you say, put a period, move on.
Move on. Anyway, all happy, and they look happy. They couldn't keep their hands off each other.
Case number 2172, Foster Gardner versus Menzel. All parties, please come forward.
Jamar Foster and Sean Garner are suing record producer Livin Menzel for event costs after Livin canceled their Halloween party.
Who's Mr. Garner? Mr. Foster.
Right here.
Are you going to be speaking? You're standing in the speaking spot.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. According to what I read, the defendant rents a music studio. Is that correct?
I rent a facility in which I own a music studio.
You rent in someone else's building.
Yes.
And you're recording people. During the course of your business, you decided to enter into an agreement with the defendant to use that recording studio, which she rents from that space, which she rents from a landlord.
May I correct you, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
She actually, it's a facility that has multiple units in it. She runs a studio, and then there's other event space inside of that same facility.
Okay, give me an idea of how large the space is.
I believe we were quoted something like 5,800 square feet.
And so you have a music studio, and around it is other open space.
Yes.
You decided to go into some sort of a business with her. You wanted to run events.
Yes, ma'am.
Social events, nothing to do with the music studio.
Absolutely not.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And according to you, you gave her $6,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Sort of front money to start using that space.
Yes, ma'am.
Subsequent to giving her the money, according to you, there were restrictions put on the space, on the number of people you could have, the kind of parties you could have, etc.
No, absolutely. I apologize.
Well, you have to pay attention,
okay,
sir, because what I'm suggesting is really in your favor.
Oh, okay. Let me. Okay.
So, is really in your favor, so you have to think.
Okay.
Subsequent to giving her, that means after giving her the money, restrictions were put on the kinds of events and the number of people you could have in the space. Is that true or not true?
That is absolutely true.
No, that's not.
I'll get to you in a second.
Okay.
And you want your $6,000 back.
Yes, ma'am. And
that's what it's about. The defendant does not deny that you gave her $6,000. And then I'm going to hear what her defense is. So I want you to tell me when, for the first time, did you have a discussion with the defendant about going into this business venture where you would front the money and whatever events you would have there, you would reap the benefit, the financial benefit from that. When did you have that discussion with her?
Okay, so we met living at the end of August of 2022. We actually signed the agreement pretty fast. We signed the contract agreement on September 1st.
May I see the agreement?
Yes, ma'am.
There was no agreement signed, so I don't know how it could be signed.
She keeps arguing that.
Just a second. Could you be quiet?
Yes, ma'am.
So in your hands.
Shh. What's?
That's the studio that she runs.
Sarah, you have to sort of explain it because I don't see signatures. You know, I'm used to looking at contracts where people sign things, but I know you can sign things by DocuSign now. Your signature isn't on here.
Yes, ma'am.
And
that looks like a signature from a DocuSign or some sort of online.
Okay. Is that you?
This was a proposal that I did. I do not even own it yet as a DBA.
Just a second. It's getting better. Don't say anything. This is your proposal. Now I'm going to read it.
Okay.
And your masterpiece management.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, so this is sort of easy. You prepared this proposal. Speak.
Yes, after.
Just a second.
Okay.
You prepared this proposal.
Yes, ma'am.
And as a result of this proposal, you received and deposited $6,000.
Yes.
Yes. Well, then you have a binding contract. Okay? So that's what I'm telling you. You have a binding contract. And there is nothing in this contract that limits the kinds of events or the number of people or anything else with regard to this space. All it says is business activities, event planning, and event rentals. Nothing else. And this is your proposal, so the terms of it are construed if there's any material question, since you prepared the agreement, which became a contract once you accepted their $6,000. I view the terms of the agreement most harshly against you because you prepared the document. And it says this agreement cannot be amended without the written consent of all parties.
Yes.
Yes. So signed the agreement, you got the money, and then at some point, according to them and according to you, you made certain limitations on the kinds of events, the numbers of people, etc.
That is.
Now, that happened, according to you, because you do not own that space. You rent that space. And there was a problem with the first party that they threw.
Correct.
Come on, we're not talking about Gone with the Wind here. We're not talking about a 6-volume masterpiece. We're talking about a yes or a no. Based upon this proposal, they gave you $6,000, which you deposited into your bank account. That means a contract was created. That's the agreement. I'm telling you, that's the law.
Jamar Foster, and Sean Garner claim record producer Livin Manziel broke their agreement by canceling their event. Livin is countersuing for the costs of a recording session.
Okay, there was a party that got out of hand.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and after that party that got out of hand, too many people or whatever it was, your landlord complained.
Yes.
Okay, and it was after that that you told your two partners that the...
We are not partners.
Yeah, according to this, you are.
We didn't finalize the agreement.
This is a finalized agreement, madam. I just said to you, I want you to pay attention. This is your proposal. Based upon this proposal, they gave you $6,000, which you deposited into your bank account. That means a contract was created. That's the agreement. I'm telling you. That's the law.
Okay.
You prepared the proposal. You signed it. They said, okay. And they fulfilled their part of the agreement by giving you $6,000, which you accepted. Got it? Got it? And you can't, according to the agreement that you prepared, modify this agreement any other way than a written contract signed by both parties. You can't change the rules. Did you know that this was rented space?
We didn't have all of the details about the place.
Well, see, next time you should know what you're dealing with, whether she's the owner or whether she's not the owner, whether she's a renter, whether she has the ability to rent out to sublease for events. I mean, all of these things, before you give somebody $6,000, you should know that. Okay. And you had one event at the space?
No, we actually didn't get an opportunity to throw any events at the space at all. The event that you were speaking of, she had partnered with another group of promoters and individuals to throw that party. So you
didn't have anything to do with that? What was it, a Halloween party or something? It was a Halloween party. But that wasn't with you?
No, that wasn't.
Is that correct?
He was a part of the event.
Is that correct, that it was with other people?
Yes, it was correct. It was with other people. They were just associated with the event. They worked at the event. And
I don't care whether they worked at the event. You received money from other people for an event.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's be clear. And after that event, you imposed additional restrictions on the use of the space.
No,
hold on a second.
They knew about the event.
Hold on. They can't tell me what they knew. This is your contract.
They called a fire marshal.
My landlord contacted me that the neighbors were complaining. People were parking on their lawns 90 minutes into the party, but it was not their party. Somebody else paid you for it. The next party they wanted to throw involved minors, and I told them absolutely not.
Yes, ma'am.
I just made it clear what types of events would be approved. Well, you can't do that. I'm just telling you, you can't do that.
Ma'am, I'm not allowed to throw events that have out drugs for children.
You have to understand something. You can do whatever you want as long as you put it in a contract. You prepared the contract. This contract is silent as to any restrictions on the space for events. So you have to give them their $6,000 back because they didn't have an event. They got nothing of value for their $6,000.
Correction. They were managing an artist whenever I met them that they were responsible for paying. So I'm countersuing them for $1,050.
Just a second.
Okay.
$6,000 they get back.
Okay.
Easy? That's a contract case. Now, you have a counterclaim, and your counterclaim is for $1,000 because you say they owe you that for a rental that they did for an artist that they manage.
I provided my services as a recording artist and a music producer for their artists. I provided them with 2 exclusive beats.
Well, show me the contract with them.
I have.
Just show me the contract with them.
There was no contract.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $6,000. Counterclaims dismissed. We're done. Thank you very much.
Court is adjourned.
I was just trying to have a proposal, not a finalized agreement.
Well, I appreciate us getting some type of justice out of the situation.
They came in wanting to do multiple things, and I was excited for my small business.
We tried as much as we could to help out and make sure that we increase the revenue streams inside of that business.
They're actually going to be hosting hookahs with children at your event in your space. I'm not comfortable with that.
To ever associate us with any type of drug use or abuse, especially involving children, that was just an inaccurate claim.
I think it's better just to part ways.
Move over to bigger and better things.
I was going to tell you I had the invitation, per se, for the event for Halloween that they had put together. So they put a lot of time and effort into planning the party. It seemed very legitimate. There was notes about security. There was notes about no alcohol, food and drink will be provided. So I could tell that they had put in a lot of effort to hosting this event. And although it wasn't a malicious breach on the defendant's part, I understand she hosted a party that had nothing to do with the plaintiffs, that she got into a little bit of hot water. So to be cautious, she was letting them know, hey, I can't host these types of events with a lot of people. It makes the street too crowded, whatever the reason. However, I disagree with you because I would have given them the full $10,000 that they were asking, because although not a malicious breach, and I understand her concern after having the incident with the previous party, but that's not their fault.
You believe that the difference between the cost of one venue to another should be ascribed to them. It's interesting, but the $6,000 was to cover a lot of events. This is one event. So
I see your point now that you put it that way.
Maybe,
I just think if you were going to make them whole, they should receive their expectant damages as well, or whatever they relied on based on the contract.
I accept your opinion.
His brother, Randall Rubin, for unpaid expenses from their mother's funeral.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, everyone.
Good morning, Judge. Case number 2011, Rubin versus Rubin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Rubin, this is your brother.
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
And this case involves sharing expenses for your mother's funeral.
Correct.
And it is your claim that your brother, who I believe was living with your mother at the time she died,
right,
agreed to pay half of the funeral expenses when he received proceeds from a small life insurance policy that your mother had left.
Yes, Judge. Our mother only left us a $5,000 life insurance policy.
That's what the case is about.
Right.
Your brother's position is it's not his responsibility. He made no such promise. Of course, you do understand that without that promise to pay for your mother's funeral expenses, children aren't normally responsible for the expenses of their parent. You understand that?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Rubin, when did your mother pass away?
She passed away August 20th of 2021.
How old was she?
She was 86.
And how long had you been living with your mother?
Your Honor, I took care of my mother since 1991.
Well, if you were taking care of her for almost 30 years, sir, what kind of physical malady did she have when she was in her 50s?
She suffered from chronic kidney failure.
When did that medical condition develop?
Pretty close to 91.
What is pretty close to 91?
Beginning in the 90s, 91, 92, etc.
So when you moved in with her, was your mother sick or was she not sick?
She was sick.
Did you live with your mother because it was not only good for your mother, but because it was good for you? That's
Correct.
what I'm trying to get
to.
The answer is yes.
Yes,
and you moved into your mother's house?
Correct.
That she owned or rented?
She was purchasing it through a mortgage.
She owned her home?
Yes, ma'am.
Was she working in the 90s?
She was.
Therefore, she wasn't incapacitated to the extent that she needed full-time care.
At the beginning, no, ma'am.
When you moved in with her, she was employed on a full-time basis,
correct,
sufficient enough to get a mortgage from a bank based upon her income.
Correct.
And what were you doing in 1991?
I worked.
For whom?
Associates.
For how long?
Off and on from 91 till about 2 years ago.
What does off and on mean?
I had several jobs in between. I sold cars for various car dealerships, and I also owned several businesses.
When you lived with your mother, who paid the mortgage?
My mother did.
Did you pay your mother for any expenses? Rent, gas, electric, phone, anything? Or did you live there and you had an agreement? You lived there, she wanted your company, whatever it was. She lived alone?
At the time, yes.
In 1991, she was just living alone?
Correct.
And I assume, therefore, happy to have your company?
Correct.
I assume. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you made no payments to your mother?
With the occasional help with some utilities or food, yes.
Okay. So you were able, I assume, to save a substantial amount of money?
Correct.
Just for my own information, so that I can sort of put this thing together.
Sure.
You have stocks, bonds, savings?
No, ma'am.
What do you have? You were able to save a lot of money. How did you invest it?
I invested in several businesses, which one is my liquidation company.
What happened with your mother's house?
When she passed, I was still residing at the house. I paid the mortgage by myself for the months of September 2021 as well as October 2021. and I remained there until, I want to say, February 2022. My sister is the executor of the estate, and she sold it just recently for $465,000.
Okay, so what I'm gathering from you, you paid the mortgage, you say, in September and October, then you stopped paying the mortgage November, December, January, and February.
That is correct, ma'am.
But you lived in the house?
I did.
Rent-free, because you paid nothing?
Correct.
Where are you living now?
I live in Nogales, Mexico.
And you live in a house, you live in
an apartment, ma'am.
You pay rent?
I do.
Anybody live with you?
No, ma'am.
What's your rent?
$250.
Okay. And what was the mortgage payment in your mother's house?
I paid $1,750 even.
Are you the sister?
Yes, Your Honor.
Could you stand up for a second? I'm just getting some information. Tell me your name.
Shannon Hayes.
Ms. Hayes, house was sold recently for $465,000. And what was left on the mortgage?
$258,000 plus a $35,000 third mortgage.
Your Honor, since her brother was not paying, since he wasn't paying, the house actually went into foreclosure, and so we had to get...
I didn't ask you anything.
Okay, I'll just...
Sarah Rose, $465,000 less $258,000.
$207,000, Your Honor.
Less $35,000.
$172,000.
Okay, and there are 3 siblings?
And also, Your Honor, there was a $10,000 lien on the property that had to be paid.
So we're down to $162,000.
Correct.
So it's $162,000 clear, so a little over $50,000 a person.
She owed the IRS, Your Honor, for back payments in excess of $54,000. She hadn't paid taxes in years.
Did you pay the IRS?
I just did.
And how much did you pay the IRS?
$54,188.
Sarah, from $162,000, take out $54,000.
$108,000.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. She had Arizona state taxes, $3,000 I paid as well.
105. Is that 105 net?
So we also have the medical bills that I had to take care of.
She had no insurance, and she had to have Medicare.
She did, Your Honor. That's her copayment.
Okay, and what was her copayment?
$3,000 in medical.
Let's do a simple $100,000. How much were the funeral expenses?
$2,434.73.
Was the total funeral expense?
Yes.
Well, that's what you're claiming he owes you.
That's his share of the...
I want to know what the entire funeral cost, sir. You'll show me the invoice.
Sure. I do have all the invoices for you. The first one, Your Honor, is just for the cremation.
1058.
Correct.
Okay. 1058.
The next one should be from the cemetery.
This is the total funeral home charges, and this is cremated remains internment of $2,200.
Correct. The next invoice you should have, Your Honor, is from services provided by a rabbi.
Okay, that was $600.
Your Honor, it was actually $700. I paid the rabbi $100 as an honorarium.
No, that's $600. Whatever you want to pay him as an honorarium, that's fine. So the total expenses are $3,858.
You should have another invoice for a proposal for a headstone as well.
1717.
Yes, Your Honor.
$3,858 plus $1,717.
$5,575.
That's it. Okay. I assume your mother died without a will.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And you are the only surviving siblings?
Yes, Your Honor.
The estate will be divided into 3 parts.
Correct.
So each one of you will get about $33,000 from the estate after all of the expenses have been paid.
There's also the real estate commission fees that we didn't mention to subtract from the net income.
And what were the real estate commission fees?
$30,000.
Oh, yeah, that's a substantial amount.
Yes, Your Honor.
So 108 less 30, $78,000. So now you're down to $25,000 each.
That's correct, Your Honor.
What I'm trying to figure out is, even giving you all those expenses that you paid, your mother's estate, absent this $5,000 life insurance policy that there was, correct? And you got a share of that life insurance policy. How much? Yes, the answer is yes. How much did you receive?
$2,500 even.
Okay, $2,500.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you get a share of that life insurance policy?
No, Your Honor.
Did you?
Yes, Your Honor. I also received $2,500.
Great. And the estate had net, after everything, at least $75,000 divided by 3, which is $25,000 apiece after you pay all expenses, which in this case would have been funeral expenses. Do you understand where I'm coming from, sir?
I do.
I have children and grandchildren. 10 years is a long time. That's a grandchild. If she didn't see me at least once a month, she better keep her fingers crossed that I don't change my will.
Sean Rubin. He's suing his brother, Randall Rubin, for unpaid funeral expenses. Randall is countersuing, claiming Sean defamed him.
So now, if what you're asking me, Mr. Rubin, is to find that you had an agreement with your brother to pay 1/3 of the funeral expenses because the two of you each paid 1/3 of the funeral expenses. Is that what you did?
Well, Your Honor,
that's either a yes or a no.
It is a no. I'm the only one that had the money to process our mother. He would not even sign to get her processed to continue the cremation. I have evidence here I'd like to submit to you where he agreed to pay me half of it out of his life insurance.
Okay, that's all.
I have text from him.
Just a second. I'm going to take a look at it. You have to understand, Mr. Rubin,
yes,
that at this point, if I find that he agreed to pay for half, then you understand that you agreed to pay for half of her funeral. Ordinarily, the funeral expenses, you may front the money for those funeral expenses, but if the deceased had sufficient money in their estate to cover their last expenses, and those would be medical expenses, which you paid out of the estate, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Taxes, which you paid out of the estate.
Yes, Your Honor.
You paid out of the estate after you sold the house, broker's fees.
Mm-hmm.
State tax fees, along with those kinds of fees, would be funeral expenses. Now, if the two of you agreed, or the two brothers agreed, which is what you're saying, that he agreed to pay half, not 1/3, but he agreed to pay half of the funeral expenses for which you are not being reimbursed by the estate. Do you understand?
Correct. I have not received anything from the estate, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, this would be you. I'll let you know tomorrow. I think it's $2,200 for Menorah Gardens, and cremation was $1,053, so it's $1,626 each. That would be you, right?
Yes.
Okay. 1,626. Because you asked him how much you owed, right?
I did.
So I assume since you asked him how much you owed, you had some sort of an arrangement with him to pay 1/3, because it does say 1/3 of the funeral expenses.
That is correct.
Okay, great.
I do want to interject, Your Honor, and let you know that when I did receive my monies, the $2,500 from her life insurance, we had communicated with one another that I had some emergency dental work that needed to be done. It was life-threatening. And therefore, he said, I don't have the email because I had to block him. I have a restraining order against him. So I lost all my emails between us.
Listen,
however,
nobody ever has their emails here or a video.
A very substantial amount of those monies went for my dental.
I don't care. How old are you?
59, ma'am.
You have lived rent-free for 30 years. And according to you, you had businesses. You worked most of that time, either selling cars or on and off for a company for 30 years. You made an agreement with your brother to pay 1/3 of your mother's funeral expenses. And as far as I'm concerned, if you had dental problems, pay for it from the resources of one of your businesses, because you had no expenses. You have very little sympathy for you. You lived in the house for months without paying the mortgage. That's outrageous. That's taking money away from them. Do you understand that?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
say you lived in the house for 3 months rent-free, at least 3 months rent-free. So if you paid mortgage payments for 2 months, I would say to you, sounds pretty reasonable to me. You know, there's a story that's created.
Correct.
And what's created here is there's unequivocal information in these text messages that you and your brother and sister, because You, sir, are claiming that he owes half. He doesn't owe half. That was never the agreement, according to what you gave me. According to what you gave me, and in your own hand, you say this is what you owe me, $1,600, not $2,600.
Well, Your Honor, if I can explain, the reason why I said half is only me and my brother were included in life insurance policy. My sister was not named on it, and it was only for $5,000. So,
sir, listen carefully to me.
I mean, if we put our money together, we could have paid for it.
Listen carefully to me. That has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. The same with his dental has
proceeds of
nothing
your
to do with
mother's
me.
final resting should have come out of the estate. That way it would have been borne equally between the three people who will profit from the estate. You understand?
I understand, Your Honor.
Very good. So if you understand that, the math is simple. If he pays a third, you get your sister to kick in whatever she's getting back from the $25,000, and everybody is equal.
Well, Your Honor, I mean, you're already getting the vibe that this guy is the biggest bum who lived off his mother, sponged off of his mother.
Let me explain something to you. That is unnecessary here. Unnecessary and really quite stupid. Stupid. You handed me evidence, sir, that you made an agreement with him. He asked you what he owed. You told him.
Yes.
$1,600. That's what you told him, that he owes you, $1,600.
That's correct.
And each of you are getting a certain amount of money for nothing from your mother. I'm going to ask you some questions. Prior to her death, when was the last time you saw her? When was the last time you saw your mother? Month and year?
I honestly do not recall, Your Honor.
Okay, just a second. Was it in the decade that she died?
Yes.
Okay, well, she died in 2021. So when did you see her?
Probably several years before that, Your Honor.
Well, so you didn't see her in the decade before?
Your Honor, you have to understand, her house was infested with bed bugs.
Pay careful attention to me. I asked you some questions.
Yes.
My question was, when was the last time you saw your mother? So you hadn't seen your mother in a decade. When was the last time you saw your mother?
I saw my mother frequently, Your Honor. It was in May, Mother's Day.
Okay, Mother's Day of
2021.
And Your Honor,
I'm not speaking to you. March of 2021. Prior to that, when did you see your mother?
November 2021.
Wait a minute. How could you see her in November 2021 if she passed in August of 2021?
November 2020.
Okay, May 2021, November of 2020. Prior to that, when did you see your mother?
I saw her frequently because...
No, not frequently. Month and year.
I don't have the...
Did you see her every month?
No, Your Honor.
Did you see her every 2 months?
About that, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, well, between May and November, that's more than 2 months. Mm-hmm. That's when you can remember.
Yes, Your Honor.
So it would be fair to say that whether he took great care of her and whether the house was clean or dirty or anything else, your 86-year-old mother lived with your brother, whether you like him or not, and you were totally disinterested in her. You're the one who started this, sir. I was about ready to finish this case, but when you say he's a bum, I say, you know what? This guy's got to be put in his place. He may have been, but he was the bum who took care of your mother. You started it.
Sean Rubin is accusing his brother, Randall Rubin, of not paying his share of funeral expenses. Randall claims Sean spread multiple lies about him.
So it would be fair to say that whether he took great care of her and whether the house was clean or dirty or anything else, your 86-year-old mother lived with your brother, whether you like him or not, and you were totally disinterested in her.
Well, that's not true, Your Honor.
Well, I want to know if you didn't see your mother in a decade, and she had failing health, I would say, as a child, you were totally disinterested in her.
I did visit my mother after she had kidney replacement or kidney surgery. I visited her after her surgery. We both did.
Just a second. Do you understand where I'm coming from, sir?
I do.
I have children and grandchildren, right?
Sure.
10 years is a long time. That's a grandchild. If she didn't see me at least once a month, she better keep her fingers crossed that I don't change my will.
Well, Your Honor, I'm sure that Sarah is very close to you, where we live out of state.
Just a second.
We both have real jobs.
Just a second. If her father didn't visit me at least once a month, and we live in different states, he too would check the will. So what I'm telling you is, if you don't see your mother for 10 years, you are a disinterested child. You're the one who started this, or I was about ready to finish this case, but when you say he's a bum, I say, you know what? This guy's got to be put in his place. He may have been, but he was the bum who took care of your mother.
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Oh, really? Did your mother have full-time nursing care for the last 10 years? The answer is either yes or no.
It's an absolute
She
no.
declined.
That's not what I asked you. Not what she declined. Did she have full-time nursing care? That's a yes or a no?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so if she didn't have full-time nursing care and she was in poor health because, based upon your blurted-out answer to me, you thought she should have full-time care.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right, but she didn't. So he took care of her. You don't like the way he took care of her. That's your prerogative, but you let him take care of her. And you went about your business in your own states where you live, and he took care of her. And you didn't like him, and he may have been a sponge and a bum. You started it. But you were not interested enough in your mother to move next door to her or to have her move next door to you when she got sick.
Your Honor.
Somebody else
I actually did ask her to move in with me, and she declined.
Right. She didn't want to live with you. There had to be a reason for that if she was being abused.
Your Honor, there is.
Unless, do I look like I need help from you?
No, of course not.
Then I want you to be quiet.
Yes, ma'am.
You owe him $1,600. That's it, not $26, what he's asking you. Put it down.
I have a counterclaim.
$1,600, and I'll hear your counterclaim.
Thank you,
Which sounds a little ridiculous to me. I'm finished with you. $1,600, that's what you owe, except for the counterclaim, which I'll hear. Well, the counterclaim is that they posted something on the internet that says that there were bugs in the shoes you were selling. If that's, just a second, quiet. Your counterclaim says that he defamed you and your business because he wrote on the internet that there were bugs in the shoes you were selling. I couldn't make that up. Let me see. Maybe I did make it up.
You're correct. That's
yeah,
exactly what
he
he
posted that
wrote.
there were bugs in the shoes I was selling.
He also put that I impregnate Hispanic women.
Just a second. First of all, that's not in here.
It's right here, ma'am.
It's not in my answer. So I want to see where he wrote. And who knows what you're doing in Mexico? I have no idea what you're doing in Mexico. Show me what he wrote about the bugs in the shoes that you're selling. Giving me a whole lot of nonsense there that I'm not going to read.
It's not.
These
are the posts that he put online. These are also letters from my mother in her own.
I'm not reading the letters from your mother.
Okay.
I'm reading a post or more where he says there are bugs in the shoes you are selling.
Yes.
Period.
Do you want to hear the audio that he sent to one of my employers?
No, I want to see where he wrote there are bugs in the shoes you are selling, which is what's in my answer.
Right here, ma'am.
May I have it, please?
And I do have a restraining order on him as well.
I'm not interested in your restraining order. Okay, so this has nothing to do with anything. I'm going to give this back to you, and if you don't hand me exactly what I asked for, I'm dismissing. I'm not reading all that drivel. I asked you for one post.
Your Honor, if you'd like to say
I don't want to hear you.
This is what I wrote.
I
if you want to see
don't
it.
want. This is not your case to prove, sir.
Okay, I'm just trying to be honest.
Here you go, Your Honor. This is one that he
Thank you.
wrote
Don't
to
tell
my
me
employer.
one. Just give me the posts about shoes. This has nothing to do with shoes.
This one is in Spanish.
If you show me one more thing that doesn't say bugs and shoes, I'm just dismissing your case. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am. Please look at this one. It is in Spanish.
No, that's your problem. The counterclaim's dismissed. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,600. We're finished here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This court is adjourned.
I'm very pleased with the judge's decision. I think she made the right decision.
I wasn't really thrilled.
I'm just kind of glad it's over. I never want to see my brother again.
We're a very estranged bunch of people. We do not like each other.
She didn't raise him right. She raised us right, and we're going to do the right thing on behalf of our mom.
First and foremost, I will visit you every month, every week, every day, if that's what it takes. But in all seriousness, this case shows how foolish it is not to memorialize your wishes for the end, because it creates a heightened sense of stress at a time when emotions are already running high. And first rule of wills, trusts, and estates class is always have a will. So it doesn't matter how much you have, how little you have. It's important, your wishes, and to prevent situations like this, your loved ones having to go through.
Yeah, and be angry with each other. I mean, they don't love each other anyway, but to be angry with each other, if you can avoid that. Even young people, Sarah, who have put anything together. Yeah. You have a will?
I do.
There you go.
I wouldn't want my loved ones going through that. So, yeah, you have to take the time and write it down. And yeah, that's really all you can